All right. So we're talking about roots, and you should be very familiar with one particular root. The what? Square root. Now, tell me this.
About to learn about the circle root.
If I asked you what the square root of 64 was, tell me. No. Let me finish. If you're explaining this to someone who had never before seen this in their life,
what times itself will give you 64?
What times itself would give you 64? So what times what? But this number has to be the same. Yes, Kevin.
Positive or negative 8.
Right. So if I told you that there's an imaginary 2 that sits real small outside the radical there, would you understand why it was a 2? It's 2 times itself 2 times, right? Does that make sense?
Not really.
Times itself 2 times? That doesn't make sense? What times what gives you 64? There's 2 blanks here. Hence the little 2. Okay? You guys have been doing math long enough to know that we have a lot of invisibles in math. Understoods. Like if I just had an X, then there is an implied what in the front? 1. And there's an implied what exponent?
0.
1. Okay.
If it was 0.
If it was 0, it would equal 1. Correct. So now I'm telling you that anytime you see a radical without anything on the outside, there's an implied 2. Okay. Now it's not the same as this. This is 2 times the square root. Okay. This is just saying the second root of. So it's saying what times itself twice gives you 64, and y'all said it was 8, and you actually said plus or minus 8, which is perfect. Okay.
I said that.
Okay, thank you. So if I change this around a little bit and changed it instead of a 2 to a 3,
The third.
you're exactly right. What times itself now?
Positive, negative 4. Nope, can't do that.
3 times. Why? I want hold that thought a second.
No, equal negative.
Exactly. This time, and several of you said 4 right off the bat, and you're absolutely right. It's a 4. Since what times itself 3 times gives you 64. Now, Gil said, wait, it's not plus or minus. Because if I had negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4, what does that equal?
Negative 64.
This means don't say my name in your videos. Okay. I don't want people to know.
You gotta think
All right.
My name is James.
So I want you to think about this for a second. What if, what if I asked you the 4th root of 16?
Okay, well that'd be 2.
It is 2, but you're forgetting something here. Plus or minus 2. What kind of conclusion can I draw here? Look.
2 times 2 times 2 times 2 equals 6.
Trey said it back at the back. If it's an even root, then you need the plus or minus, right? Because
go both ways.
right, because a negative number times itself an even number of times will always be positive. In other words, a negative times a negative is
Think of it
positive.
like this. Negative, 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 negative.
Yeah, think about it like that because that makes a lot of sense.
Well, if you have 2 negative signs, what do they make? A plus sign. If you have 3, that's a positive negative number. And then what? You get it out.
Wow, that is pretty
yeah,
smart. I
yeah,
never
yeah.
thought about that. All right, so listen. Let me take this a little step further then.
Hold on, let me write that.
I'm sorry. What's the implied root here? Since there is not one. 2.
You know what you could do?
One of these will work and one of them will
The
not.
trace one will work.
I think it's a 3.
This one will work because
It's odd.
it's odd.
It's also
Quattro.
Okay.
Negative 4 will equal it.
So I want you to think about this with me for just a minute. We said an even root needs a plus or minus. Not only that, but even roots
And the negative root means a minus. Right?
must be positive
So basically,
under the radical, unless we want to get into the eyes, right?
basically just figure out what we're solving.
Yeah. But odd roots,
How big will these numbers be?
keep the sign.
What are you trying to do?
I'm going to show you how to do it on your calculator in just a second.
I don't need a calculator.
Let's do a couple examples. Let's say, and I'm going to set it up this way. Don't start yelling and hollering when I do, because this is the way your homework's set up. They ask you to find the nth root of A.
This would be, what's the square
And
root
then they'll
of
give you an
-216?
N and an A Gilconder. And they'll ask you to simplify without a calculator. So if you're thinking nth root of A, you're thinking N on the outside and A is under the radical. Okay? Be very careful when you write this. Remember, this is not this. Okay? The N sits in there like a little chair, right in the radical.
Wait, so it's going to give us a number for the variable?
So yes. So it'll say if N is 3 and A is negative 216, and since we've done a lot of work
took
with
my number.
cubes,
Took my number.
I'm sorry,
It's -6.
it is negative 6.
How? What?
-6 times -6 is 36 times -6 is 216.
We keep the sign because it's a negative number.
That's absolutely right. Because it's an odd root, I keep the sign, so that's negative. So now I'm asking myself, what times what times what gives me 216?
-6.
Negative 6.
Yeah.
I do not need a plus or a minus because it is not an even number.
I'm so going to fail. If it's an even number plus or minus,
Correct.
why is that?
Does it work that way?
Because it works
Because
both
a
ways.
negative number times itself an even number of times always gives you a positive number. Don't blurt this one out.
Oh,
No, Gil, don't blurt it out. I know you're excited.
I'm not excited.
Don't blurt it out.
9.
No, it's not 9. That's the square root, not boys and girls. This means the fourth root of 81. So what times what times what times what? Close.
Positive or negative?
Positive or negative. Plus or minus 3. One more?
Yeah, sure.
This is so not everything. This is
I didn't
about
say
a
anything.
third of what we're learning today.
Don't get an attitude. You have an attitude right now.
You gotta say Gil's name.
Yeah, you forgot you did.
Gil, don't blurt this answer out.
Yo. Condor.
This one you're going to have to think about a minute.
Alright. Hold up.
Do not blurt it out. Look out!
And the reason it's not positive or negative is because like if it's positive or negative, that would have to be like n equals 6, but when it's an odd number, it don't need something operator. Can we jump through that?
And listen,
You feel me?
the bigger this number is, the smaller the number is that it's going to equal. Because if you think about you're multiplying it this many times, that number gets big fast, okay?
This is the easiest thing we're gonna do today.
The easiest thing we're gonna do. Like, see what are you talking about, Bill?
All right, per Lexi's request, let's do one more.
Wait. Work it out.
That is worked out.
So 18 times 3 is 54. Correct?
Correct.
54 times 3 is, shut up, 162.
This is the fourth root of 625. What did you guys get? Plus or minus 5. I do need a plus or minus since it is an even root. All right, moving forward. We all agree. And we'll just take that exact, guys. If you're talking, can you stop? We'll take that same fourth root of 625 so we don't have to make a new problem. If 625 has an exponent on it, what would that exponent be? 1. We said there's an implied 1, right? We talked about all the implications in math and those little imaginary things that happen. Darion, put that away.
So smart.
This is what we call radical notation.
I don't like anything that ends in notation.
That's our next title.
Why notation?
Because it's longer.
This is radical versus rational notation.
On this one we used to just do addition and subtraction.
Every single
That's
Use the other two thirds.
root.
I was really good at that.
Every single root can be expressed exponent. That exponent is a rational number, okay? Meaning a fraction.
Let me know when you're paused so I can go at them.
Here, I'm going to teach you a little trick.
A yellow circle.
Yeah.
That's the sun.
It's a sunshine.
Sun.
I feel like something has to be.
Look at my... When y'all are done, let me know, and I'll finish teaching you what you need to know for your test.
Ray.
You can't stop the class for a few people, man. It's not right.
Now, if you look at the problem in the first column, do you see these two numbers? One of them is exposed to the sun, and one of them is covered up.
Oh, I see.
On my notes, I am not going to understand what this is. What this is another.
No, look. But it's got a cover over it, right?
It's a roof.
Okay. So, in this one, the 1 is under the shade, the 4 is getting sunburnt, right?
We got cancer.
When we change the form, we keep the base the same. Now, whenever I change, I'm going to make a fraction out of these two numbers, the 4 and the 1. Because the 1 was in the shade before, it's now going to be in the sun, and the 4 is the one that's going to be in the shade.
Okay, I like that.
It's a stupid little quirky tip to help you remember, okay? The fraction bar. No, it will not always be 1. If I rewrote that with an exponent, the base is still 15. What is the fraction? 7/3. Okay, I'm not asking you at this point to tell me what it equals. I'm asking you to change the form.
So that's all we're going to have to do in homework?
So just give me a second. I'll be at home. My what?
Change the form.
Maybe I was going to go eat some ham.
Change the form. That's exactly right. The 5th root of 8 to the 3rd power. Okay.
512.
Now I'm going to give you fair warning on this one.
Is that what you would do? Because if you multiply that out, it would be 512. And then you gotta do it through
This is the same thing. You can write the exponent on the outside there. I show you this just because sometimes it'll look like this. Move it under here so that it's a little easier for you to see the sunshine part, okay? Change the form on this one.
The 7's gotta go on the roof.
Did you want it to be on by ourselves or out loud?
Okay, you
Try
flip it because you can't have a negative answer.
That's exactly what I wanted you to see, is because those just like factoring doesn't go away, Brandon, unfortunately, neither do the properties of exponents. Which means if I have a negative exponent, it's got to flip down to the bottom before I do anything else. Yes, Phoenix.
Could you, write your fractions backwards?
Wait, wouldn't it be 3/2?
Have the class go the other way, because it looks so much prettier using the 3 instead of
Oh, so I didn't get it all wrong. Oh, no.
I'm quite confused.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Oh, are you flipping it?
Yes.
Festive.
Because she put it on the bottom because
Oh,
the
one.
she needed her numbers to stay the same, but she still needed to flip it.
You did it,
What
another
was
thing.
that problem that you did?
That's all you
when
do,
we
right?
had- Every time we had a negative, it was on our test like 5,000 times. Every time we had a negative, we had to flip it. That's what we doing?
That's exactly what we just did, yes.
Miss Vicky, why did you put it on the outside?
Because I sunshined it.
What kind of pie did you have?
Okay, so we're gonna evaluate some expressions, some of them radical, some of them rational, but we're gonna do all this without a calculator.
Is this the last one?
Close. All right, so I want you to think about this for just a second. Yes, you'll have a no calculator section.
We have no calculator section.
I can do it without one.
4 to the 3 halves. If you just looked at this, I would imagine you go, I have no earthly idea what that equals, okay?
Yeah, I do.
So what we have to do when we evaluate without a calculator is we're going to change forms, okay? And hopefully when we change forms, the answer is going to kind of pop out at us.
I knew it.
So if I change this form, it becomes what?
It becomes 2 square root 4.
So square root of 4 to the third. Now, because we talked about those properties of exponents and things, it
Guess what? It equals 8.
doesn't, oh my God. It doesn't matter which one you do first. If you do 4 to the third and then square root it, or if you do square root and then third it. It doesn't matter which one you do first. I would do the root first if it pops out at you, because generally that's going to make your number a little bit smaller.
2 times 2.
In other words, this is 2, and then the exponent of 3 is here, and 2 to the third is 8.
Whoa, I got that.
I like that.
But I didn't do it that way, Miss Brady. I went with the number and I made it 64, and then 8 times 8 is
That's fine, but since you don't have a calculator, those numbers are going to get big fast.
You're wrong. It's positive and negative.
Oh, I get it now, Mr. Gay. I bet y'all come to the board and do it. I wasn't even paying attention.
Let me show you, several of you said,
There you go, Leroy.
all right, let's say I changed it to,
Whoa, that's a big. Oh, I thought it was 3.
okay. So now when I change the form on this, because I'm asked to evaluate, what's the root?
4.
4. What's the base?
8.
What's the exponent?
3.
If I don't have a calculator and I'm trying to do 81 to the third, that's a pretty big number, right?
Oh, that's 81.
Kind of, but then again, it's not that.
But
27 is
the fourth root of 81 is a pretty easy root. What is it? We did this one earlier.
3, 4.
3. Always start with 2. I always, whenever I look at these, I start with 2 and I go, okay, well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, so it can't be 2. Then move on to 3, because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to go much bigger than 3 or 4, okay? All right, so 3. Now I can take 3 to the third power, and that's one we're familiar with. What is 3 to the third?
27.
27.
This it? So wait, how did you get the 3 to the third? Go back and zone it out.
The fourth root of 81 is 3.
Alright, buddy. I expect nothing more than a nothing less than the 91 of the next test.
It's got fast 39
First thing I notice is that negative exponent. Shh, if you're talking now, stop. We're going over it together.
It doesn't matter though.
So it flips and becomes positive. When I sunshine this, I get 1 over, what's the root?
2.
2.
9, 3.
What?
So what's the square root of 9?
3.
Anything to the 1 is just itself, so I get 1/3 plus or minus. Did y'all get that one?
Yeah.
That's like taking crack from Jack.
Now, basically, we just break
I'm on your test. There will be a non-calculator portion, but I'm not going to go around and take your calculators and then give your calculators back. What I'll do is I will expect to see all these steps. Okay, the steps that we're showing is what I want to see. So if you need your calculator to say what times itself twice gives you 4, and you figure out that that's 2, that's fine. But I want to see this step, and this step. Now, there'll be some that we evaluate with the calculator.
Draco.
And we'll save the solving for tomorrow. But I want to make sure you can work around your calculator for several things. So if I asked you to do 4 to the 2/5, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is look and see
What is my square root?
the 5th root.
No, square root.
No, the 5th root, DeAndre. Look at that fraction.
Square root.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, it's square root.
It's not a perfect root, right?
Nope, so it cannot be factored.
Well, we're not factoring
Well,
that.
it
So,
cannot be
oh my goodness.
root it. Can't root it.
I'm going to show you what to do. Take out your calculators. I know, I want it to record. All right, take out your calculator.
I'm gonna do it in my head.
Me too.
Got it.
I'm tired of calculating.
Whoa, your calculator look weird.
It's
All right.
just like the same calculator we be using. Matter of fact, you got one on your
When you do a rational exponent, okay, type your base, which is 4. This is your exponent button, and what I want to do, because anytime you have a fraction, make sure it's in parentheses. So do parentheses 2 divided by 5. If you don't put that in parentheses, it's going to do 4 to the 2nd power and then divide that answer by 5. And that's not what we want.
1.741.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you don't have a graphing calculator, your scientific calculators will still raise to a power. 1.74. Everyone needs to make sure you can get 1.74 using the calculator that you have.
I'm not good with calculating.
The little caret button. Yes, Trey. Yes, yes. Let's do 64 to the negative 2/3. Try this one on your calculator. This time it's a negative.
How do you put a negative in the calculator?
The button below the 3 is your negative button. Don't use a subtraction sign for a negative. Okay? Yep, that's right. 64. Raise it. Remember your parentheses, and it doesn't matter if you make the 2 or the 3 negative. Just make one of them negative.
0.0.
I know how to do this, so do I have
Roots are a little easier, okay?
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to answer.
Hustle, baby.
Let's say I needed to do the 4th root of 16 to the 5th. Okay? There is a button on your calculator. Now we know where the square root button is, right?
Plug that in just like that.
Okay. If you go into math and you see that 5th option, it says X root.
You plug in for
Okay.
X and then you can just put
The only thing is you have to plug in for X first, Gil. So I have to do 4, then go into math.
How would we do that?
5th root.
That's so good.
when you do the up thing, yeah. Okay, I can do that. Go to the bathroom.
Make sure it's 32. It is.
How did you get to that?
I did it.
There's literally a button that says math.
I don't even know how to instrument.
Now, math 5. Because under math, this is X root.
What kind of calculator do we need?
TI 83 or better. Now, 32.
Yeah, I got it.
Guys, I am trying to help you. I am trying to explain to you, if you don't have this calculator, how you can utilize the calculator you have to still solve the problem. But I need you to listen to me so that I can explain it to you. We just did, everyone in here has a calculator that will raise to a power. You might not have a calculator that will do a certain root, like a fourth root, but we've spent all morning talking about how to change this from a root to an exponent. So this is the same thing as 16 to the what power? Say it again. 5 over 4. So if my calculator won't do the root, or I can't remember how to do the root on my calculator, I could always come in and do 16 raised to the 5 over 4. Did you put the parentheses around the... And I got this same thing. Everyone look, it's the same thing because I've just sunshined it and changed the way it looks.
So do it again. We'll do them all.